Earth began to upgrade. When everyone went to another world to take refuge, I was the only one left behind. Even the gods could not detect my existence, simply because my body possesses a special constitution. Just moments ago, I discovered that there wasn't a single soul at school, on the streets, or in houses. It felt as though they had vanished on the spot, and time was permanently frozen at 2:45. While I was wondering what was happening, a white-robed angel appeared behind me. She told me everything that had occurred here because Earth's experience points were full. It needed to evolve to the next stage. Time would freeze for 10 years. By then, divine power would overflow throughout the world. Through a status window, humans would be able to explore the secrets of the universe and themselves, just like higher existences such as angels. However, Earth would also upgrade into a cataclysmic era. To prevent the extinction of humanity, the gods had transported everyone to another world to study divine power, giving them time to adapt and undergo training. But because I possessed the special skill of a forerunner, the gods could not detect my existence and thus left me behind. To compensate for not taking me along, Lita, a messenger of God, would accompany me for 10 years. However, since Earth was currently in a stage devoid of divine power, it was impossible for me to learn it. The only thing I could do was desperately train my physical body. During that time, Lita took care of all the food, and I didn't even have to worry about washing the dishes. Quickly, 5 years passed, and I began to learn spear techniques. Lita was also by my side to guide me. In the blink of an eye, I had studied martial arts for 4 years. Today, Lita suddenly proposed that I duel her. Carrying the strength accumulated over 9 years, I rushed toward her. With just a casual wave of her hand, I lost the match. Lita said she wanted to act as my sparring partner. Although very reluctant, I persevered through her beatings for an entire year. Finally, after 10 years, I made it to this day. I dressed up neatly to welcome a new beginning. After a friendly farewell to Lita, I stood at the starting point where everyone had vanished, feeling tense. Although I hated to part with Lita, I was glad that I could finally return to my former life. Yet, several hours later, no one had returned. With an awkward expression, Lita appeared behind me and said that a mistake might have occurred somewhere. Angered, I threw a tantrum. I had already waited 10 years. Did they want me to wait another 10 or 100 years? However, as time ticked on, 10 years, 20 years, even 50 years, everyone had still not returned. Although my physique and spear techniques had reached the master level, I could no longer clearly remember my parents' faces. 50 years of perseverance only made me stronger. But how much longer could I hold on? Would everyone ever return? I was now utterly sick of the repetitive martial arts training. Lita did not want me to give up because no one knew when the great cataclysm would descend. As for me, I told her that I planned to study hard next. Doing the exact same thing forever would only make it impossible for me to persevere. From then on, I began reading books all day long, ranging from novels to business books, then to history, geography, chemistry, and so on. By the time I finished reading all the books in the library, I also went on to learn the languages of other countries. After that, Lita and I began traveling around the world to pass this tedious life. While traveling through various countries, I also conveniently read every single book in the world. Although I didn't know how much time had passed, I had no time to complain about being tired. There was still so much to prepare before the great cataclysm arrived. Lita never expected that even several hundred years, I would still firmly believe that humanity would return. She prayed to the gods to absolutely return mankind before Li Wei reached his limit. Lita did not want to see me give up on life. After reading all the books, I began to learn butchery techniques. While I was bowing my head to process a wild boar, Lita said to me, "It has been 274 years by now, which is a long time even for an angel." She never expected that I could persevere in preparing for the future like this. As for me, it was as if I didn't hear her, focusing completely on my work as a butcher. By the 300th year, I had completely mastered butchery techniques, and then I learned blacksmithing, though it took a year just to make a single sword. Alita laughed and said that this thing probably couldn't even slice through a radish. Although her mouth mocked me, she wanted to keep the sword as a keepsake. Over the next 50 years, I made all kinds of weapons, but none of them satisfied me. It wasn't until 100 years had passed that I finally crafted a perfect spear. After mastering butchery and blacksmithing, I began studying martial arts again. By this time, I no longer cared what year or month it was. Fortunately, Lita was always by my side, while humanity still had not returned. Lita began to worry. What if I reached the point of absolute despair? It would be great if she could bring about some new experiences. After thinking for a long time, Lita suddenly realized that the only thing I had never experienced seemed to be romance. The moment this thought appeared, Lita's face flushed bright red. She felt she was going crazy. As an angel, how could she have such an absurd thought? But Lita thought that if I agreed, she wouldn't mind either. Right at that moment, I noticed a strange situation and immediately called out to Lita. Seeing her slight confusion, I pointed at the vibrating sword by her waist. This was a sword she had taken as a keepsake back then. Unexpectedly, this sword flew out on its own in an instant. In a hurry, Lita chased after it. But right at this moment, the clothes on my body turned back into the outfit I wore on the day time stopped, and everything was gradually returning to its original state. Lita begged the gods not to take this sword away, but when she looked down, she realized that the cataclysmic era had arrived. Down below, I was also floating upward. Lita originally wanted to give me a proper farewell, but she could not resist the power of the gods either. Over these 1,000 years, a deep affection had long since developed between us. Lita's last words before being sucked away was a complaint that, in the end, we didn't even share a single kiss. As for me, I could only quietly watch her drift further and further away. Lita's departure left me deeply disappointed. I recalled her saying that she was an angel belonging to a higher existence. Did this mean that if I also became a higher existence, I could meet Lita again? The world's reset was complete. Everyone began returning one after another. When I opened my eyes again, the surroundings were packed with people. A status window also appeared in front of me. Everyone was talking about their experiences over the past years. In other words, they had 10 years of divine power training, while I was lagging behind by a full 1,000 years. But right now, I only wanted to see my parents, because I had almost forgotten what they looked like. When I arrived home, a voice suddenly called out. The moment I saw my mother, all the familiar memories came rushing back. Even though 1,000 years had passed, there wasn't the slightest awkwardness between us. The dining scene was exactly the same as before. The only difference was that my parents' conversation was entirely about their experiences in the other world. When they asked about me, I was afraid they would worry, so I had to give a casual, vague answer. According to what they said, despite having 10 years of training, it seemed that not many people could control divine power well. After chatting with my parents until late at night, I reluctantly returned to my room. At this moment, I discovered that the spear I had spent 100 years of dedicated effort to forge had not disappeared with the reset. The only reason we could think of was Lita. In short, this was a good thing. When the time came to fight monsters, I wouldn't need to go looking for a new weapon. When I opened my status window and saw that the attack power of this steel spear was 800 points, I didn't know whether that was high or low. So I started searching online for information shared by people who had returned from the other world. First, I organized the data regarding levels. Levels 1 through 5 represented the level of an ordinary person. Word had it that in the other world, the recruitment standard for soldiers was usually level 7. Above level 10, one could acquire professions like swordsman, archer, and so on. Upon reaching level 50, there was an opportunity for a second-class advancement. This was considered the hallmark of an expert. When reaching level 100, a third-class advancement could be performed. After the third advancement, the difficulty to level up became hell mode. Because of this, there was almost no one online posting that they had ever met someone with a fourth-class advancement, though all kinds of speculations existed. They said that only high-level monsters like dragons or Bahamets could reach the realm of the 4th or even 5th advancement. Currently, that was all the information that could be gathered. The rest would have to wait for further investigation at school tomorrow. Although the world had undergone a massive change, it seemed my daily life hadn't changed much. After a moment of silence, I muttered Lita's name. Sure enough, I still missed her very much. But in the next second, a voice suddenly rang out. If Lita heard you say that, she would definitely be very happy. Right after that, a tiny angel appeared in front of me. Her name was Leah, and she was an angel sent by God to teach me how to use divine power to make up for my blank 10-year period. Of course, Lita's contribution was indispensable here. She had wept before the gods, arguing that I had been lonely on Earth for 1,000 years and was the only person who did not know how to use divine power. So this was to ensure fairness. At Lita's request, God sent Leah to help a laggard like me quickly master divine power. The reason Lita wasn't allowed to come was because the higher-ups didn't want angels and humans to become too close. Observing me for a moment, Leah was somewhat surprised. She didn't seem to match the situation Lita had reported, because with such a powerful body, it didn't even seem necessary to send an angel. Low-level monsters probably couldn't even withstand a single punch from me. Now Leah realized she had been tricked by Lita. She never expected an angel, who was supposed to be innocent, to use such a devious trick. But since she had already accepted the mission, Leah said that over the coming days, she would help me fully master divine power. As an angel belonging to a higher existence, her mere presence could activate the divine power within my body, and it could increase my perception and control efficiency of divine power by 10 times. During the era devoid of divine power, even if I had stayed with Lita for 1,000 years, it wouldn't have had this effect. Now that it was the cataclysmic era, Leah estimated it would take only 1 year to help me master divine power. Therefore, throughout the entire next year, she would sit on my head. Seeing my worry, Leah mentioned that she had cast a magic spell. Lower existences would not be able to see her. The next day, I went out early, but because of my skill, no one had detected my existence. Furthermore, this skill could not be turned off. However, the angel Leah said this skill of mine was not bad at all. According to her, all the skills the people around me were bragging about combined couldn't match mine, and this is a great opportunity to gather information. During that time, I overheard talk of a powerful existence holding the title of Empress. This was a female student at our school who had performed outstandingly in the other world. I also learned that a level-restricted dungeon would appear, so I asked Leah about it. Through her explanation, it turned out that a dungeon is a type of trap, and the one who sets it up is God. Inside, there are all kinds of monsters. God places bait to lure monsters into the dungeon, and once the dungeon is full of monsters, the exit is sealed. They're locked inside. But humans are different from monsters. As long as they qualify, they can freely enter and leave. Through this method, God created a relatively safe hunting ground for humanity. But dungeons would automatically disappear after a certain period, so all the monsters inside had to be cleared out before then. However, there were also some powerful monsters in the world. Some of them could destroy the traps, and some of them could even create dungeons as a disguise. Leah reminded me absolutely never to lower my guard. Monsters in the early stages of the Great Cataclysm were quite weak. She suggested that I take advantage of this time to hunt more monsters to level up. After all, I had a monster-like physique and could easily eliminate low-level monsters around level 25. Right at that moment, Leah seemed to sense something. She told me that I could engage in actual battle immediately. The moment her words fell, a commotion broke out outside the classroom. It turned out to be a large swarm of insects. Not only were they massive in size, but their outer carapaces and physical structures were completely different. I watched as several groups of people who resisted were killed. The students were all fleeing in terror because when they were brought back, their data had been reset and everyone had become level 1. As for me, I snapped a wooden stick and quickly swung it countless times. By the time I stopped, a simple weapon was finished. After making a few more, I prepared to head out. However, despite having the Forerunner skill, I would still draw attention during a fight. Therefore, I asked Leah if there was a way to conceal my identity, so she gave me a mask to use. Immediately after, I leapt down from the 18th floor, killing a giant mantis with a single kick. At that moment, the system announced that I had killed a giant mantis of level 13, receiving 800 experience points, increasing my level to level 3 and boosting my attributes. Feeling the change in my body, I understood that this was what leveling up meant. Although there was only a small growth in magic power, I was still very happy. Right at that moment, several giant insects appeared behind me. so I gripped the wooden spear in my hand tightly. In the next second, I threw it out with immense force. A giant ant was crushed in an instant by the powerful force. After that, I pulled out another weapon and sliced the ant into 2 halves. Suddenly, several large mosquitoes appeared. I killed one first, but another mosquito quietly approached from behind. It pinned me firmly down to the ground. But how could my 1,000-year-old body be harmed by a weakling like it? My body had long transcended the realm of ordinary humans. Having dealt with the last mosquito, a mantis appeared above. It swung its claws to attack me, but was easily dodged. However, Leah hurriedly called out to warn me that a massive number of monsters had arrived as reinforcements, completely surrounding me. Yet, I felt no fear at all, picking up my weapons to frantically slaughter these monsters. By this time, my level had reached level 6, but suddenly I heard a roaring thunder. I saw a bolt of lightning strike down from the sky, turning the monsters to ash with a single blow. Standing before me was a girl who was also wearing a mask. The lightning in her palm was still slowly swirling. While I was wondering in surprise if this was magic, Leah told me not to lose focus and quickly kill off all the monsters. The girl beside me controlled the lightning to slowly eliminate the remaining monsters. Being able to continuously attack with lightning like that meant her divine power is definitely abundant. I figured she was probably leveling up continuously too, because every time one levels up, their physical stamina fully recovers. Surely divine power works the same way. In short, this was just the last monster. After killing it, I reached level 7. By the time the military arrived as reinforcements, the scene held nothing but a pile of corpses, and in front of them, a man was butchering the monsters. Leah said that since I studied butchery, I could obtain mana stone by processing monster corpses. She would tell me which part of the monster is usually located in. Just as many people were marveling at my strength, I extracted a mana stone. However, turning my head around, I realized I was surrounded by a crowd of people taking photos. At this moment, the lightning-controlling girl stepped forward. She wanted to ask me to help her process the monsters. And this was the first time the Empress and I met. Hearing her words, I didn't refuse, but asked how much she could share with me. She was also decisive with her offer. Just for helping her process, 4 parts of the carcasses would be given to me. Hearing this, I happily agreed. From the talk of the people around, I understood that the girl was indeed the Empress. Her strength was truly as powerful as the rumor said. Not long after, the dissection was complete, and the Empress received a mana stone and many materials just as she wished. As for me, I hoisted my share onto my back, intending to leave while everyone was captivated by the Empress's power. But Leah told me not to worry, because after the battle ended, under the effect of the Forerunner skill, everyone suddenly noticed I had vanished. Everyone misunderstood, thinking my departure speed was just too fast. In reality, I was right behind them. Although this situation was exactly what I wanted to see, it was still a little saddening. I planned to use the obtained materials to craft some defensive gear, but perhaps armor alone wasn't enough. Fortunately, making a pair of bracers and knee pack was possible, though Leah reminded me that using monster materials to make equipment is highly complex, so it would still be safer to wait until I could find a professional blacksmith later. Regarding this, I was incredibly confident, because right now, the best blacksmith on Earth was probably me. Seeing this, Leah fell silent once again. Was this really the helpless human that Lita had spoken of? By now, she really wanted to go back and expose Lita, but since things had come to this point, Leah asked if I wanted to know about divine power techniques. That refers to utilizing divine power crystals like mana stones to imbue equipment with special power. It is a concept similar to, yet higher than, blacksmithing on Earth. Hearing that there were techniques to forge even stronger equipment, I excitedly grabbed Leah and begged her to teach me. This sudden action startled her. After pushing me away, she said she would teach me. Leah then mentioned that before learning, it was necessary to prepare all the required materials and mana stones, or divine power crystals with similar properties to mana stones. Seeing that I didn't understand what a divine power crystal was, she gave an example, such as a dragon heart, a material containing a massive amount of divine power. Once the preliminary shaping of the equipment is done, crush the mana stone and apply it to the surface. This is the simplest, most basic divine power equipment. As for the technique of imbuing special power, since I didn't know how to control divine power yet, Leah believed I wouldn't be able to achieve it. But I wasn't discouraged and prepared to try it first. Seeing this, Leah also offered a new method, which was to use a large quantity of mana stones to substitute for divine power, consuming the divine power or mana stones to grant the weapon fire, ice, or other special powers. It could also give the weapon additional effects like stamina recovery when blocking attacks. What kind of power is bestowed upon the weapon depends entirely on the blacksmith's will. Therefore, generally speaking, imbuing power requires an extremely intense desire. So I began crafting the equipment. Very quickly, a pair of bracers and knee pads were finished. After sprinkling the mana stone powder on them, the status window popped up with a notification that I had learned the divine power technique. But the crafting process wasn't over yet. At this moment, a portion of the mana stone still remained. I intended to utilize a divine power within the mana stone. Seeing me close my eyes to sense it, Leah was very astonished. She never expected that I would already want to attempt imbuing power right now. She could see that I was imagining giving the equipment the sharpness of a mantis's scythe. Just as it was about to succeed, it was on the verge of failure due to an insufficient amount of mana stones. Watching this scene, Leah couldn't help but feel it was a pity. Right after that, she stepped in to supply me with divine power. In the next second, countless energies converged into my bracers. Leah thought it would still fail, but I smiled. This was because my divine power technique skill level had increased. This also meant that these bracers had successfully acquired a special power. Raising my hand to give a gentle swing, a nearby iron chain was severed in an instant, and its power was exactly what I had just been thinking of. Although there was help from Leah, being able to succeed on the first attempt at crafting still earned her praise. But because I had just destroyed a public chain in the park, I hurriedly ran away. Leah was somewhat speechless, as she could have used magic to restore it. The next day, I explained things to my mother for a long time, saying I was just going out for a stroll, which was the only way I successfully managed to leave. Halfway, I told Leah that I really wanted to meet the Empress again, because I was highly interested in the divine power she controlled. The Empress's power seemed to far exceed that of others from the alternate world. But Leah said this was nothing special. After all, she had 10 years of experience. The person who was truly special in Leah's eyes was still me, having no divine power yet able to process the carapaces of monsters. Even she couldn't help but be amazed. Just as her words fell, Leah suddenly stopped. Seeing her turn her head, I asked what had happened. Leah said she sensed a pack of monsters approaching. The leader was a level 35 tundra wolf. Hearing these words, I couldn't help but be startled. This was because Leah had previously said that the early stage of the Great Cataclysm would not feature high-level monsters. Left with no choice, Leah had to explain. She had felt that something was wrong since yesterday, because on the second day of the Cataclysm, the monsters we killed were already in the teens. Now, a problem had occurred with Earth. Leah thought that next, she might need my help. Before waiting for me to ask more, she urged me to set off quickly.
The situation on that side seemed very urgent. Along the way, Leah also explained the reason why the monsters were so powerful. God had relocated humans before the Great Cataclysm arrived, but animals were left behind on Earth. This was because God assumed leaving animals on Earth for 10 years wouldn't pose any problem. However, due to an unknown error, a severe distortion occurred in Earth's timeline. In the end, while 10 years had passed in the other worlds, 1,000 years had already gone by on Earth. During these 1,000 years, because I was basically focused on my work and staying with Lita, I completely failed to perceive the change in time afterward. Even though time had been reset, the animals that were supposed to live for only 10 years had inadvertently survived for a millennium. Now, the outcome was crystal clear. The animals on Earth had become incredibly powerful and highly intelligent. By the time Leah brought me to the location, the scene was already a bloodbath. The angel Leah mentioned that she had reported this up yesterday, but before adjustments arrived, she hoped they could take on the mission to eliminate the monsters, and she would also provide a reasonable reward afterward. Looking at this pack of ferocious wolves, I understood that this mission might not be easily accomplished. Fortunately, the wolf pack before my eyes wasn't overwhelmingly strong, nor did it cause me any hesitation. Immediately, I gripped my steel spear and charged forward, plunging straight into the wolf pack on the ground. Even the strongest tundra wolf died on the spot under a single strike of mine. Because I had leveled up yesterday, my strength had also been greatly enhanced. There were about 70 monsters at the scene. The death of their leader didn't make them give up, but the remaining minor wolves were even less of a match for me. Just as I was slaughtering them, a cry for help echoed from behind. Several people who hadn't managed to retreat in time were now surrounded by the wolf pack. Unlike the safe hunting environments of the other world, these people whose levels had been reset found it completely impossible to use magic when facing these wild beasts. At that critical, hair-raising moment, I arrived with my spear to provide timely rescue. With just a single thrust, 2 ferocious wolves were slain. My experience stopped on reaching level 9. Because I didn't have a profession yet, it was impossible to reach level 10. Fortunately, the excess experience would be stored. After being saved by me, the people present recognized who I was. I was the masked person from S University yesterday. However, the title they gave me was incredibly awkward to hear. The boss of S University, a powerhouse famous for speed. This made me feel a bit embarrassed. Leah, meanwhile, stood by his side, adding fuel to the fire. As I continued to massacre the wolf pack, something astonishing happened. One of the gray wolves had taken a man hostage. Observing its adept manner, Leah suggested that this probably wasn't its first time doing so. Yet this trick still appeared rather feeble in the face of absolute power. While speaking, the spear in my hand had already pierced through the gray wolf. Seeing that my weapon was gone, the remaining wolves prepared to attack. But under Lita's past guidance, my martial arts were also exceptionally strong. Under my fierce fists, the wolf pack could only die quickly, one by one. Very soon, over 70 wild wolves were dealt with by me. However, when I prepared to butcher them, the spear proved to be very inconvenient. It seemed that in the future, I would need to craft a knife specifically for butchering. This time, the number of carcasses was simply too large, and I couldn't handle them all by myself. Right after that, I negotiated with the military that had arrived at the scene, selling them a portion of the materials after removing the mana stones. Just like that, this hunt came to an end. The military brought the payment for the materials, acting very generously. Leah also suggested that I build a good relationship with the military in the future. Not long after the battle ended, the effect of my concealment skill began to take hold. After confirming that no one could see me, I slowly walked back home. Upon arriving home, I had to continue preparing. I believed that the upcoming monsters would probably get stronger and stronger. As I neared my house, under Leah's guidance, I opened my status window. Next was choosing a profession. Currently, there were many types of professions to choose from, among which assassin was the first I eliminated, having concealment already being enough. At this point, Leah also told me that once I mastered divine power, concealment could become an active skill, and there were a total of 23 professions available for me to choose from. I was a bit indecisive, so I had to ask Leah if she had any recommendations. This number took the angel quite by surprise. She hadn't expected that I, having just interacted with this registry window named Akas, would already have 23 professions to choose from. If I waited a bit longer, there's no telling if it might even increase to 40 professions. After thinking for a few minutes, Leah gave me 2 options. One was a spearman, and the other was a martial artist. After all, spear techniques and martial arts were things I had practiced beforehand. Although getting beaten up during that time was a regular occurrence, Leah believed I was very lucky. Opportunities to learn techniques directly from an angel were rare, and she also advised me not to worry. Once my level was a bit higher later on, there would be a second and third opportunity to choose sub-professions. Ultimately, I made my mind, and immediately chose to become a spearman. Choosing this profession was also because I wanted to utilize weapons. Regardless, the destruction power of a spearman was definitely greater than a martial artist. However, the moment I pressed the confirm button, another change occurred in the window, so I hurriedly told Leah that a new option had appeared on it, named Blood Spearman. This immediately startled Leah, because professions with a prefix are all unique special professions. It is a profession custom designed specifically for each chosen individual. Possessing power that far exceeded the original profession, Leah told me I absolutely had to choose the Blood Spearman. Although the experience required to level up a special profession was extremely high, its value was much greater. After I pressed the confirmation button, my previously accumulated experience also helped me reach level 18. But very soon after, I discovered that even though I had clearly pressed Blood Spearman, the result turned into the Illusionary Spearman. Its effect was that while in a state of concealment, attack power would increase by an additional 10%. This seemed to be due to the issue with my title, the Lonely One of the Universe, which caused a change during the profession acquisition process. Seeing that it wasn't the majestic blood spearman, I immediately regretted it deeply, but by now there was no way to choose again. At this moment, after confirming the profession, a surge of power also rushed through my entire body. My body became much stronger. However, according to Leah's speculation, with my current growth speed, it was possible that I still wouldn't be able to obtain divine power even during the second class advancement. Furthermore, this class advancement of mine did not grant any new active skills either. Fortunately, Leah's words helped put my mind at ease a great deal. She said that if the second advancement still couldn't grant skills, the window would keep recording it. By the time the third advancement arrived, I would definitely be able to obtain an incredibly powerful skill. After digesting what I had gained, Leah urged me to quickly head outside. She wanted to lead me to continue eliminating monsters. Besides me, there were other representatives who had accepted the mission, so I only needed to be responsible for my own area. Asking Leah about it, the Empress had indeed also become one of the representatives to eliminate monsters. This was the mission that God had assigned to us. If we took care of more than others, the rewards would increase accordingly. Very quickly, we reached our destination. In front of us appeared a giant grizzly bear. Facing its terrifying strength, many people could only flee frantically. As for me, I excitedly raised my steel spear. But before I could even make a move, a loud noise and shaking suddenly erupted all around. I originally thought the military was firing missiles, but Leah slowly pointed ahead, because the one causing the tremors was actually the grizzly bear. It was fighting with the military personnel. Facing these attacks, it was just like a scratch to the grizzly bear. The previous news had also mentioned this. The government had invited many capable people to protect the city together, but currently, it seems they had not arrived yet. Seeing that the soldiers probably couldn't hold on, I directly put on my mask. Seeing me just standing in place, Leah urged me to hurry up. At this moment, I was waiting for the right opportunity. Once the concealment skill took full effect, my attack power would increase by an additional 10%. Moreover, using spear techniques could also grant a 10% attack stack. With these two buffs, I naturally had to wait for them to be fully charged. When the monster wasn't paying attention, I would unleash the most fatal strike. By the time the grizzly bear noticed me, it was already unable to dodge. In an instant, I thrust hard right into his head. The powerful attack meant the grizzly bear's hide couldn't defend against it, but I also understood very well that the monster in front of me definitely couldn't be defeated with just a single strike. After all, according to what Leah said, the grizzly bear was already a stage 2 monster. At this moment, I took a deep breath and then spoke to the soldiers and hunters behind us, telling them to leave this place first, because ordinary people could not intervene in the upcoming battle. Although they were people who had cultivated in the other world, with the current situation on Earth, they couldn't handle this. Slowly turning its head, the grizzly bear understood that I was its greatest enemy. Dodging the sudden red beam of light from the grizzly bear, I held up my spear and thrust fiercely. This strike I aimed at its foot, while Leah, on top of my head, had an enjoying expression. She found it very thrilling. Being wounded a second time made the grizzly bear extremely furious, but it couldn't keep up with my speed, so what I needed to do was find a good opportunity. When I saw the grizzly bear expose a flaw, I immediately concentrated all my power. In the next second, a single spear thrust pierced into the grizzly bear's head. This powerful blow drove all the way through, and it died right on the spot. I also received a massive amount of experience, successfully reaching level 23, while simultaneously obtaining a critical strike skill. Leah was highly satisfied with my strength. With just 3 spear strikes, she hadn't expected I could kill a level 53 stage 2 grizzly bear. And next was my absolute favorite time, butchering. But suddenly the grizzly bear's body shrank by a whole size. It turned out that just now was its gigantification skill. After its death, the skill lost its effect. While discussing the newly acquired skill with Leah, a small car drove up from behind. The people who got out of the car seemed to be other capable individuals who had arrived late.
Hearing the news that the monster had already been eliminated, some of them shamelessly remarked that a stage 2 monster was only worth this much. Since I was processing the bear carcass, they also noticed me nearby while looking at the bear. Facing the impolite questions from those few people, I completely had no desire to answer. After all, I was more or less an introvert and didn't like interacting with this crowd of extroverts. A moment later, I had gathered a pile of bear hide. It was a pity that this monster didn't drop a mana stone this time. At this point, a soldier shared some information with me. It turned out that there was a software in the country that could pinpoint the monster appearance information held by the military on a map. He hoped it could be helpful for my hunting. Seeing this, I voiced my thanks and immediately after left the scene as well.
At this moment, I pulled out my phone, preparing to check if any monsters had appeared nearby. Unbelievably, the map showed that 3 different areas were simultaneously under monster attack. Seeing my slight panic, Leah told me not to worry and that we just needed to eliminate them all. Hearing that, I didn't hesitate any longer and immediately set off. A while later, I had successfully cleared all 3 waves of monsters, but the harvest left me deeply disappointed, because through it all, I had only gained a single level. Although these 3 waves of monsters couldn't compare to the grizzly bear, it was also due to the nature of my special profession. If I had chosen a conventional profession, Leah estimated that I probably would have reached level 30 by now. Fortunately, I gathered quite a lot of materials. After selling them all to the military, I now had more cash than I could ever spend. The next morning, right after I woke up, a notification popped up on my status window. It announced that the disconnected link to the other world had now been restored. From now on, everyone could use their actual bodies to travel back to the other world, where they could execute relevant missions to receive rewards. Seeing this news, my face instantly fell. I hurriedly sought out Leah to ask what this meant. She provided an explanation. The monsters currently on Earth had become too powerful, so the higher-ups decided to send humans back to the other world again so they could safely accumulate experience points. Everyone else could run off to the other world at any given moment. Everyone except me. This made me feel extremely frustrated. Leah waved her hands dismissively, as she reasoned that I was a lonely person by nature anyway, so this wouldn't really disrupt my life. Furthermore, regarding my situation, Leah said there was nothing that could be done. After all, she wasn't the one who set the rules. Hearing Leah's words, though I was disappointed, it didn't seem entirely unacceptable. It was just that I couldn't go to the other world. But Leah suddenly added, wanting to go to another world is not completely impossible. You just need to step by step become a higher existence. When that time comes, not only will you be able to visit other worlds, but you can even enter their celestial realm. By then, you will be an existence equal to the angels, and you will be able to meet Lita once again. Her words brought me no small amount of comfort. While having dinner with my parents, I caught another news broadcast. A global emergency curfew had been declared. All outdoor activities were to be temporarily suspended, including going to school and work. Seeing this news, I understood that the country no longer had any way to guarantee everyone's safety. So I suggested to my parents that they should head back to the other world to take refuge. As for me, I told them I could manage perfectly fine on my own. At that moment, my mother suddenly said, "You are probably that masked person appearing on the news, aren't you?" Seeing the startled look on my face, she said she knew it was me the very first time she saw the broadcast. In the end, my parents listened to my advice and departed for the other world. But what I didn't expect was that Leah also had to leave. She had to ascend back to heaven to receive her mission rewards. Before she left, I asked her to bring me back some ice cream when she returned. This request left Leah a bit bewildered. During the time she was gone, I used the money I had on hand to build a new base right here to process various materials. A few days later, the angel Leah returned, and this time she appeared in her true full-size form. Immediately after, she held out her hand and said she wanted to give me my mission reward. The moment I grasped Leah's hand, a notification flashed. The Heavens Representative mission had been completed. The reward was a +1 to all attributes, alongside acquiring the Eternal Fire. I was just about to ask what the Eternal Fire was when I saw Leah wiping her hand with a look of pure disgust, saying the Eternal Fire, just as its name suggests, is a flame that never goes out. It is not only the most precious flame in heaven, but also an essential tool required for forging high-level equipment. More importantly, this is something Lita meticulously chose for you. Hearing this, I was instantly overjoyed and said she still knows exactly what I need, just like before. During this return to heaven, Leah had also thoroughly investigated the root cause of why the monsters had become so powerful. It turned out that the gods' use of power to freeze time had caused all living creatures on Earth to be saturated by their divine influence. Over this millennium, the creatures had grown vastly stronger and more violent. Next, the angel Leah presented me with a new mission: to create a destruction trap. It could automatically lure monsters inside, confining them, just like a dungeon, and then obliterate them all. This was the only way to rescue Earth from its current predicament. Naturally, the more difficult the task, the more bountiful the corresponding rewards would be. Reflecting on how by the fourth day the monsters would drive humanity into a corner, I knew that if left unnoticed, they would only grow more rampant. But Leah seemed to have anticipated my decision long ago. Right after, she pulled out a sack of materials. Inside, there was not only a magic stone as large as an ostrich egg, but also 3 specialized metals exclusive to heaven. But what brought me even more joy was the finest toolkit from heaven, and finally, a highly complex crafting blueprint. These top-tier items instantly ignited my blacksmithing spirit.
At the same time, I told Leah to prepare my reward in advance. Seeing this, Leah smiled and said that the reward would definitely surprise me. Upon hearing that, I immediately changed into my blacksmithing attire. Next, just stay quiet and watch me perform. Right after that, I took the largest magic stone and used it to fuel the eternal fire. Once the flame had completely melted the magic stone, I took out my hammer and struck it exactly 981 times, and only then did I successfully forge this tiny cube. Leo watched my forging technique in astonishment, exclaiming that if my profession were changed to a blacksmith, I would probably be able to craft weapons that could challenge the gods. But this was merely the preliminary shape of the trap. Next, I had to follow the blueprint to engrave special intricate patterns onto it. Watching me work so intently, Leah seemed to understand Lita's feelings better, how a high-level angel could fall for a low-level human. A few hours later, I abruptly put down my carving knife. Floating in my hands was a cube emitting a bright light and covered in complex patterns. At the same time, I received the title Legendary Creator, which granted a 20% boost to production efficiency. Looking at the divine power cube in my hand, Leah's eyes were filled with absolute disbelief. She couldn't believe I had finished it so quickly, but the reality was that I had worked for exactly 5 hours. Only then did Leah realize that she had actually been watching me work for that long. Holding the cube, Leah understood that my craftsmanship was absolutely perfect. However, to keep me from becoming too arrogant, she told me that the work was just barely up to standard. Now, only the final step remained, the divine memory phase. But for this, Leah needed to wait and call her comrades down to lend a hand. Just as I was filled with hope that Lita might appear, the next second brought different angels instead. Together, they negotiated the details of executing the divine memory, while also marveling that a mere human could actually construct such a destruction trap. With everything prepared, I held the energy stone and waited for the 2 angels. But they simply instructed me that I only needed a steadfast will to complete the destruction trap. The rest could be left entirely to them. Very quickly, the 2 angels placed their hands on my shoulders. In the next second, a surge of divine power compressed toward me from all directions. This was truly the pressure of higher existences. The overwhelming divine power felt as though it wanted to completely crush me. Seeing my strained expression, the long-haired angel sneered. Unable to handle it at just this level, huh? To this, I immediately shot back at her, saying this level was still a far cry from my limit. I had to concentrate my mind to create something extraordinarily alluring to monsters, something that the animals who had been silent for 1,000 years could not possibly resist. Once I solidified my intent to bestow this trait, a wave of energy erupted within my body. Following a powerful flash of light, an even more intricate cube slowly manifested. It even came attached to 2 rare attributes, Alpha and Beta. These were random attribute bars attached when utilizing divine memory, which could vastly amplify the trap's power. The angels all praised my forging capabilities. Next, it was time to go with them to set the trap. But the moment we stepped outside, a truly apocalyptic scene unfolded. I hadn't expected that in just a few days, the monsters would devastate Earth to this extent. A short while later, the angels found a suitable location on a deserted mountain. Leah threw the cube from her hand, and the divine power cube midair immediately radiated intense energy. But in the next second, the cube suddenly turned to ash, and right after, I felt a violent tremor. At the same time, the monsters flocked together in a massive horde, frantically rushing towards the trap as if drawn by an irresistible force. The angels called this type of trap a dungeon. Seeing that the effectiveness far exceeded expectations, the long-haired angel again affirmed my talent for trap crafting. Meanwhile, Leah simultaneously activated dungeons in other regions. Even though those previous dungeons were no longer functional, Leah used magic to convert their aura to match the one I had created. After speaking with them, I looked down at the monsters marching towards their demise, and the wave of sadness washed over me. They were just like me, having persevered and survived for 1,000 years, yet in the end, they were easily manipulated by angels and gods. In reality, humanity was no different, having been instantly teleported to another world without any room for resistance. We were all just playthings in the hands of the gods. After all, a single mistake had forced me to live alone on Earth for 1,000 years. During those 1,000 years, if it weren't for Lita, I would probably have gone insane. But now, even Lita wasn't by my side. Therefore, I had to become stronger, strong enough to never be controlled by anyone, bound by nothing, just so that one day I could completely grasp absolute freedom. However, because Earth was still fraught with danger, my father and mother had not returned yet. But with their abundant social experience, they could likely live well in the other world. Once the dungeon was complete, Leah transformed back into her previous miniature version to support me. Originally, 27 more dungeons needed to be crafted to stabilize the situation on Earth. However, the other angels had already returned. Regarding this, Leah explained that constructing such a destruction trap demanded a massive amount of energy, and the two previous angels had exhausted their mana, requiring a few days to recover. Hearing this, I asked her if other angels could be sent down instead, for instance, the angel Lita that I longed for day and night. Hearing this, Leah immediately dashed my illusions. Because Lita had pulled strings from me, she currently had a mountain of paperwork and tasks to handle, making it impossible for her to visit Earth for the time being. After checking on a few things with Leah, I decided to head to the workshop at my base to prepare in advance. Arriving there, I instantly felt my spirits lift. I would craft a few traps today and wait for the angels to return to finalize them. But at this moment, Leah stared at the materials on the table and fell into deep thought. Recognizing my outstanding performance from earlier, she decided to give me a gift. Right after, she used magic to upgrade the quality of the beast hides I had gathered. Looking at these perfect hides, my desire to forge equipment completely overrode my intention to make traps. Quickly, after measuring the hides, I prepared to fashion them into gloves and boots. After a period of hammering and processing, a short while later I obtained a pair of tundra wolf gloves and leather boots of rare quality. Considering that this type of defensive gear would be too hot to wear, I added a ventilation attribute to them. Seeing me finish so quickly, Leah was stunned by how rapidly my skills were advancing. Next up was using the bear hide earlier obtained to craft armor. Standing beside me, Leah watched me work with a satisfied smile. But she hadn't expected that once I sat down, I would work for an entire day. Even as an angel, Leah began to feel a bit drowsy, but I still had no intention of resting because armor is the primary life-saving gear and had to be made perfectly. After a few more hours, my startled exclamation completely drove away Leah's sleepiness. At this moment, a unique tier hardened bear armor had appeared, but it wasn't finished yet. I wanted to add some special offensive methods to it, so I immediately used the teeth and bones of the tundra wolf to reinforce the armor. Once reinforced, not only did its attributes double, but it also came with a hidden skill. When the armor was attacked close range, it would automatically deploy sharp spikes to counterattack. Reflecting on my previous designs, Leah realized that I seemed to have a massive loving for things that could pop out sharp edges. Confused, she looked at me and asked why. Facing her question, I immediately became serious again. Leah originally thought that either I or my parents held a deep grudge against porcupines or something. But as I saw it, this kind of design is a romance that belongs solely to men. Hearing this, Leah was instantly left speechless. She had actually thought I possessed some sort of special background, never expecting it to be for such a bizarre reason. After the reinforcement was complete, the armor also came with the alpha and beta traits. By now, the materials were almost entirely used up, with only a few beast bones remaining, so I used half of them to craft a bone knife specifically for butchering. With the remaining bones, I fashioned a brand new mask for myself. Once I put on all the finished equipment, I immediately felt a lot more handsome. But right at this moment, a massive vibration echoed from outside, heavily affecting both Leah and me. Immediately after, Leah used her divine power to sweep the area. Then, with a look of utter disbelief, she said the military was engaged in combat with a monster. Hearing this, my expression instantly changed. The area I lived in had already been fitted with a dungeon, yet a monster had still appeared outside. Very quickly, emergency warnings began to broadcast one after another. It turned out that a Stage 2 monster had manifested on the streets. Hearing this, Leah also understood that the dungeon absolutely could not confine all Stage 2 monsters. Seeing this, I prepared to go handle it, only hoping the opponent would be a bit weaker than the previous grizzly bear. But before the battle, it was still better to reinforce my steel spear first. Very quickly, I forged the steel spear up to the unique tier, which unexpectedly granted it a 20% critical strike rate. With full preparations made, I rapidly dashed toward the location of the incident. A short while later, we sighted our target. Standing atop the rubble ahead was a colossal monster, hundreds of meters tall. This terrifying hunting leopard brought down a fighter jet on the spot with a single swipe of its paw, and even the anti-tank missiles utilized by the military had no effect on it. In the next second, the leopard charged directly toward the soldiers on the ground. I had originally thought everyone had safely teleported back to the other world, but the military personnel and a portion of the first-class advanced people had actually stayed behind. They could have gone to the other world to level up safely, yet they chose to remain on Earth to fight. But they were doing a truly magnificent job. If Earth and the nation I live in ceased to exist, then even being able to go to another world would be entirely meaningless. I have never claimed to be a savior, but if I can enable more people to survive, then let me fight until my last breath. Thinking up to this point, I quickly rushed toward the monster. Its actual strength was clearly vastly superior to that of the previous grizzly bear. At the same time, a military tank fired directly at it. A violent explosion instantly erupted on the monster's head. However, this action only caused it a slight amount of pain. Right after, the infuriated monster directly lifted the tank, intending to swallow it into its stomach on the spot. And it was at this exact moment that I leapt up above the monster. Thanks to the concealment effect, the monster failed to detect me initially. In the next second, the spear in my hand thrust fiercely toward the monster. This single strike also triggered the critical strike attribute of the steel spear. Seeing me reappear to battle the monster, the people all around seemed to recover the courage they had lost. Having suffered my brutal blow, the monster helplessly hurled the tank away, but immediately after, I sensed a massive threat. The monster had not sustained a fatal wound. In its fury, it suppressed the pain and lunged to claw at me right at the spot. Fortunately, I reacted in time and easily dodged it. Taking advantage of the monster being wounded, the soldiers poured a rain of bullets toward it right at the spot. As for me, I went to chase after the tank that had just been thrown, because there were still 2 death-defying soldiers inside. Opening the tank's hatch, I told them to quickly grab onto me so we could leave. After rescuing them, I immediately leapt into the air, landing heavily on the ground in the next second. The soldiers who had escaped death thanked me while panting heavily, even stating they wanted to become my loyal fans. But the monster, having recovered its wits, clearly locked its attention onto me. It seemed prepared to eliminate the enemy posing the greatest threat to it. Seeing this, I told the 2 soldiers behind me to leave first. Meanwhile, Leah anxiously said, "Your aura has been completely locked down by the monster, so concealment cannot be activated." Hearing this, I told her not to worry, because when I came here, I had already prepared to confront it head-on. Just as the battle between us was about to ignite, a terrifying bolt of lightning struck down from the sky. In the next second, the lightning hit the monster straight on its head. The newcomer was none other than the Empress, who I hadn't seen in a long time, and she had actually shown up with her real face revealed. The human leopard, having been attacked by the Empress, actually wanted to use me as a target to vent its anger. Seeing this, I did not fear it at all. Right after, a backward leap successfully dodged this terrifying attack. However, the leopard caught me in my mid-air opening, thrusting its head violently toward me right at the spot. Seeing this scene, the Empress up in the aircraft also broke into a cold sweat for me. But the people down below quickly realized that something was amiss. It turned out I hadn't been sent flying at all. Rather, I had intentionally lured the hunting leopard into attacking me, utilizing the built-in skill of my armor to launch a counterattack. The spikes protruding so abruptly left the leopard heavily wounded once again. In the next second, it began running frantically, trying to shake me off, even slamming itself violently against the building ahead. But I had long since seen through its intentions. How could I possibly let it leap freely into the air? Borrowing that momentum, I lunged toward the leopard. In the following second, the steel spear triggered a critical strike once more. Right after, it pierced through the leopard's body, inflicting continuous injuries. By this time, the hunting leopard was barely able to hold its ground. Seeing this, the military tanks fired simultaneously at it, while the level 1 individuals on the ground also rushed forward one after another. Originally, the attacks of level 1 players had no effect whatsoever on a stage 2 monster, but even an elephant can be brought down by a million ants. Furthermore, the leopard was no longer at its peak condition. I thought that by this point, the leopard would have no strength left to resist, but unexpectedly, Leah urged me to finish it off quickly, because the beast was currently attempting to evolve to stage 3. Very quickly, the leopard's wounds underwent a terrifying mutation, and a massive number of tentacles even began sprouting from within. This was a sign of evolution. Its evolution wasn't complete yet. If I didn't break free from the tentacles to seize the opportunity to destroy it, the consequences would be unpredictable. The Empress up in the sky also launched an attack at this exact moment, but even when struck directly by lightning, the tentacles regenerated rapidly. Seeing this, the Empress understood that the level gap between her and the monster was simply too wide. Her attacks couldn't kill it at all. But very quickly, she came up with a solution. Right after, the Empress shouted down that she could buff me. However, this magic would fully deplete her divine power, and she wasn't sure if I could actually kill the monster. But time was ticking, so I immediately yelled back for her to just try it right away. Hearing that, the Empress didn't hesitate any longer. In the next second, she leapt directly out of the aircraft. In the blink of an eye, the Empress landed abruptly right in front of me. After giving me brief instructions, the Empress stood up. At the same time, a formidable surge of lightning power slowly coalesced in her hands as her magic took effect on me. The system promptly announced that I had received the power of lightning. In this state, my attack speed, movement speed, and critical strike rate were all vastly amplified, and my attacks carried a fixed chance to inflict additional lightning damage. However, it would leave a certain negative debuff once the duration ended. Seeing these enhancement effects on me, even Leah hadn't expected the Empress to possess such powerful buff magic. Sensing an unprecedented power inside my body, I abruptly broke through all obstacles and drove my spear straight through the monster's body. In the next second, the additional lightning damage was triggered. Facing my heavily buffed attack, the monster was finally successfully slain. The experience gained also helped me level up to level 28. With the battle concluded, I collapsed straight onto the ground. Leah praised me, saying I had done an excellent job. The Empress, meanwhile, was still observing to ensure the hunting leopard was completely dead. I asked out of curiosity if she hadn't received any experience points. To this, the Empress replied, "You and I are not in a party, so I can't receive any experience." Hearing this, I blanked out for a moment. Because I had always been a solo player, this was the very first time I had ever heard of such a mechanic. Leah remarked that a lonely person like me had no need for a party anyway, so there was no point in knowing. Once the monster's death was confirmed, the crowd erupted in cheers. But very quickly, the time came to divide the spoils. The dead leopard had shrunk considerably in size. Just as the crowd was about to make their move, I spoke up to stop them, stating that when dividing the loot, my share should be the largest. Having said that, I asked the Empress how to divide it fairly. After a moment of thought, the Empress suggested that I should receive 6 parts, she should take 2 parts, and the remaining people would split the final portion. Her method of division left me highly satisfied, so I turned around to face the others. Seeing that no one stepped forward to object, I leapt straight onto the crown of the leopard's head. In the next second, I extracted a near stage 3 mana stone from its body. After securing the item, I looked to the Empress for her approval. She agreed to let me keep the mana stone, as it roughly equated to 6 parts of the total value. However, the rest of the crowd couldn't accept this division. After all, it was a high-level mana stone. Watching this scene, Leah lost what little hope she had left for these level 1 individuals. As for me, I recalled my mother's teachings. When a dispute arises, fists are the finest tool for communication. Right after, I threw the mana stone straight back into the monster's corpse and told them to divide it themselves. But if my share fell short by even a fraction of an inch, not a single person present would leave safely. Sensing my terrifying aura, the crowd finally sobered up a bit, and they all hastily agreed to let me take the mana stone. Hearing this, I smiled. Sure enough, in the cataclysmic era, nothing under the vast sky matters more than having the bigger fist. When I turned back to retrieve the mana stone, the Empress asked if I could process her share of the materials as well. The payment would be 4 parts of the yield shared with me, and furthermore, she only required the hide, leaving all the bones to me. Hearing this, I agreed immediately. Shortly after, I collected a massive amount of beast hides. But because the quantity was so vast and the sizes so large, the Empress called her people to transport them back. Seeing this, the remaining people wanted to make the same request, but I didn't maintain such a pleasant attitude toward them. They continued to beg for my help, wanting to quickly gather their spoils so they could head to the alternate world. But this time, I demanded 5 parts of all their materials. With no other choice, everyone had to agree. After processing all the materials, I prepared to head back home, but the Empress called me out to stop me. She remarked that my concealment was truly powerful. If she didn't actively focus her consciousness, she almost wouldn't recognize me. The reason she called me back is because she wanted to form a party with me. Regarding this, I flatly refused her. Fortunately, the Empress didn't push the matter, as she had to continue fighting on Earth anyway, and we would likely cross paths frequently in the future. Right after, she handed me a business card telling me I could contact her anytime if something came up. Having finished speaking, the Empress turned and left. After receiving the business card, I finally found out. As it turned out, the Empress's name was Jiang Mai Lai. However, I had no intention of contacting her, so I put the business card into my pocket, and having gathered a massive amount of materials, Lee and I prepared to head home. Next, I had to continue crafting a great many things. After acquiring the necessary materials, Leah and I returned to the workshop. For the upcoming period, I still chose to work on a batch of traps first. Meanwhile, Leah was contemplating why the monsters on Earth were so powerful. The disaster had occurred not long ago, yet a stage 3 monster had already appeared. Seeing Leah think to the point of going crazy, I told her she should just ask God and be done with it. But Leah looked at my poker face and was a bit puzzled. This was because on Earth right now, not a single person with a first-class advancement had even appeared, yet the monsters had already evolved to the 3rd stage. Although with God's help, humans could go to the alternate world to perform missions and safely grow stronger, the evolution speed of the monsters far outpaced humanity. If this continued, maintaining a balance would be fundamentally impossible. Hearing this, I told her that if no solution could be found right now, it was better to just do what we can do first. Next, while speaking with Leah, I learned that it seemed my country was the only one where a near stage 3 monster had appeared. Immediately, I said to her that if this was the case, then the rapid evolution of the monsters was very likely caused by the apocalypse traps. Leah was startled by my strange line of thought, but looking back, she thought this hypothesis was highly likely to be the truth. The monsters were facing a threat from the traps. Under extreme pressure, they had begun to evolve frantically. Therefore, the dungeons were very likely the trigger. But if we didn't confine them inside the underground cities, a massive number of monsters would slaughter humans to evolve. So even though the underground cities were the reason they leveled up, the underground cities were also something indispensable for humanity. Understanding this, I continued crafting destruction traps, while Leah stared at me for a long time. She suspected that the only thing that could bring me joy was forging these things. But in reality, the reason I made these equipment traps was merely to be able to experience many different novel things. After all, during those 1,000 years of stillness, I had never been able to experience such novelty. Hearing up to this point, Leah said to me, As long as I become stronger, there will be more different things waiting for me. This is also my firm belief, the effort to continuously make myself stronger. Time ticked away until it was late at night. At this moment, the angels who had recovered their mana came to find me. After finalizing the destruction traps, the angels departed for various countries to continue deploying the underground cities. Although I didn't know where they were going, I only hoped that dangerous monsters like the previous one would become fewer. Leah told me, "You don't need to worry. Even if a stage 3 monster appears, it's not your fault, because only by deploying a massive number of underground cities can Earth return to normal." Seeing the angels off, I was also a bit tired. Immediately, I packed up my things and prepared to go home. The moment I arrived home, the first thing I did was take a shower. But looking at my appearance in the mirror, I felt a bit doubtful. After showering, I asked Leah if my body had become more robust lately. Hearing this, Leah found me too slow on the uptake, because every time I leveled up, my body would develop. Hearing this, my doubts vanished. No wonder I felt my face was getting more and more handsome lately. Although Leah wasn't very interested in my face, she still told me that in the eyes of humans, I had indeed become more handsome. Being acknowledged by Leah, I was instantly overjoyed. Right after, I frantically flexed my muscles in front of her. Seeing this, Leah threw a snack bag at me, telling me not to block her from watching TV. Before leaving, I reminded Leah to go to sleep early and then return to my own bedroom. In the eyes of the higher existence like her, physical appearance was no longer anything special. As for Leah, she felt the most wonderful thing about me was that unyielding, unceasing will to persevere. Very quickly, the next day arrived. As the first ray of morning sunlight shone through the window, I also slowly woke up from my dream. But at this moment, I discovered the system suddenly displayed a notification. As it turned out, I had acquired another new skill, Rest. Hearing that I received the Rest skill, Leah hurriedly flew over. Seeing me look down on this skill, she told me that the difficulty of mastering the Rest skill was as high as SSS- rank. Leah was curious how I had learned it since even she hadn't mastered it, and that was because in the past, every night I would research how to sleep more comfortably, so today it naturally awakened. After understanding the conditions to acquire it, Leah wondered why she couldn't master it. I originally thought the skill would have a massive effect, but looking at it from Leah's words, its function was simply to allow one to rest very well. But I very quickly spotted a contradiction. If it only had this effect, Leah wouldn't have been so surprised earlier. Immediately, I told her to quickly speak about the advantages of the Rest skill. But before that, she decided to tell me about the information regarding skill evolution. The skills we acquire can all continue to develop. Just like class advancements in a profession, the power of a skill after evolving will be significantly boosted. Meanwhile, my physical techniques, spear techniques, and rest skills could all continue to evolve. But butchery and blacksmithing had already reached their limits. Because concealment wasn't an active skill yet, it couldn't evolve for the time being. But the reason my physical and spear techniques hadn't leveled up yet was simply because the level up conditions were too difficult. Seeing that I was still unclear about the specific requirements, Leah told me to open my information panel to take a look. But after seeing the evolution conditions above, I completely blanked out. Evolving my spear techniques in a short period was fundamentally impossible. As of now, I hadn't even laid eyes on a stage 3 monster, let alone obtained a stage 4 mana stone. As for the Rest skill, it would only show its massive effects after evolving. Currently, it could only strengthen my recovery during sleep, but I was only level 28 right now, and didn't even know Divine Power Magic yet. If my skills couldn't be enhanced, the upcoming battles would only become increasingly grueling. Leah deduced that the reason behind my slow leveling was likely due to my special profession. The only reason I was stronger than everyone else at the moment was thanks to the peak martial arts I had practiced over 1,000 years. But as time passed and others advanced their classes to strengthen their divine power, I would quickly be left behind. However, she believed that if I actually managed to master divine power, I would probably grow into a monster that surpassed everyone. Leah had a strong feeling that that day was not far off. But in the next second, she hurriedly cut off her own train of thought, because if she thought about it further, my existence would conversely become a massive threat. 2 days after she explained the skills to me, I woke up to find breakfast placed on the table. It turned out that my mother had returned from the alternate world to make it for me. But right after finishing, she had hurriedly left again. While eating breakfast, I began to ask Leah how to fulfill those skill upgrade conditions, because among them, there were certain monsters that needed to be hunted, which didn't seem to exist on Earth. Hearing this, Leah told me not to worry. Not long after divine power was activated, monsters that originally didn't exist on Earth would also slowly begin to manifest. The higher the concentration of divine power, the faster the descent of those creatures would be. Right at that moment, a news report on the television suddenly caught my and Leah's attention. Looking at the familiar architecture on screen, Leah and I recognized it immediately. This is the exact spot where we had the grand battle against the hunting leopard 2 days ago. The colossal corpse of the hunting leopard was supposed to be on a plaza right there. But when the camera panned to the plaza, the original giant hunting leopard corpse was completely gone. I thought the people from that day had processed it all. But after pondering for a moment, Leah believed the matter wasn't that simple. Just as the news reported, the scene of the monster's corpse was remarkably clean, and the broadcast even mentioned that the people who had hunted the monster together earlier had all vanished. Hearing up to this point, Leah and I were instantly deeply shocked. Many people speculated that the dungeon had swallowed both the humans and the monster, but as the creator of it, I understood this couldn't have been caused by the dungeon. Very quickly, I thought of another possibility, that there was another monster at the scene. Leah was absolutely certain the giant leopard was dead. After all, the mana stone had already been extracted by me, so that hunt should have concluded successfully. Next, Leah voiced the only remaining possibility, that there was a cub inside the belly of the previous monster. Hearing her words and thinking it over for a bit, I also understood that this could be the truth. Because although it only flashed briefly on the television just now, I still spotted a black leopard. It seemed the ability it excelled at most was concealment. Only then could it deceive the eyes of so many people. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel regretful. If I had completely butchered the giant leopard back then, I certainly wouldn't have left this hidden danger behind. But in Leah's eyes, this wasn't my fault. The root cause was that those people were squabbling over the materials with one another, and failed to process the corpse in a timely manner, which led to this. Leah's words couldn't completely absolve me of responsibility. I had still been too careless. Looking at my downcast expression, Leah suddenly felt that she still didn't completely understand the kind of person I was. And now I understood as well. The condition of the hunting leopard at that time clearly meant it was a goner. Its desperate struggle, as it turned out, wasn't to evolve. It was perhaps to hide the cub concealed inside its belly. Before, I hadn't completely butchered the corpse, leaving the final half to the participants present. Thinking back now, that leopard's cub must have used the concealment skill to stealthily hide there. Furthermore, after I left, everyone argued over the division of the spoils. Therefore, the mother leopard's corpse must have been left there for a very long time. The cub was highly likely born at that exact time. But now, Leah thought of an even worse outcome. There were many participants who killed the hunting leopard. When the newborn cub was born, it devoured its mother's flesh, plus the massive number of level 1 humans. Hearing her words, I asked with a shudder, this cub couldn't possibly be stage 3, right? And Leah also confirmed my suspicion, that with a special skill like concealment, the actual strength of the cub was definitely stage 3. I fell silent, simultaneously switching off the noisy television. Leah really wanted to know if I had the confidence to face this monster. Regarding this, I was naturally brimming with confidence. If its ability was also concealment, then I wouldn't necessarily lose to it. Looking at my confident demeanor, Leah also offered some good news. If its concealment ability was exceptionally outstanding, then its defense and offense aspects would be relatively weak. In addition to just being born, its strength shouldn't exceed the previous hunting leopard by too much, so I prepared to craft some new gear to capture it as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if it makes its way into the city center, everyone else will be in grave danger. But right then, I suddenly remembered someone who could help. The Empress, who could give me those massive buffs, so I decided to take the initiative and contact her. Seeing me straight up pull up my phone to call the Empress, Leah quickly warned me, Doing that was no different from exposing my identity. A moment later, I arrived at a public phone booth nearby. Without wasting time, I started dialing Jang Mailai's number. Although I had previously said I wouldn't contact her, the current situation was quite exceptional. With her help, my win rate would skyrocket. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Empress received the call, though the public number flashing on her screen made her a bit suspicious. Once connected, she didn't recognize my voice. With no other choice, I had to drop the awkward title those people had given me. Hearing that, the Empress finally realized it was me looking for her. I didn't beat around the bush. I immediately told her the real reason behind the disappearance of the monster corpse. Realizing how severe the situation was, the Empress decisively agreed to support me. But what I didn't expect was that she also mentioned she would contact the military so they could provide backup together. With my helper locked in, it was time to fine-tune my gear. Entering the workshop, I pulled out a vast amount of materials that had been split from the Empress's share. Aiming squarely at the monster's concealment trait, I wanted to craft a tracking-focused weapon. Leah didn't understand what I was pulling off. If it was just a weapon, my steel spear should have been more than enough. But what I wanted was a long-range throwing weapon. The enemy's skill was concealment, but it was highly likely not as strong as my own passive stealth. Right now, a sneak attack was the best strategy. In no time, I used the bones of the mother leopard to fashion a harpoon. It differed from regular spears because its barbs could firmly hook into the prey. Furthermore, I added a little twist. Although the piercing power of the harpoon was immense, it would be entirely pointless if the rope attached to the back snapped. So I decided to use the leopard hide to braid the cord. A while later, Leah stared at the finely crafted gear, even suspecting I had used divine power magic to create it. Hearing that, I was completely speechless on the spot. If I actually mastered divine power, I wouldn't need all this trouble. I could just march right up and give that monster a proper beating. Finally, after a few hours, everything I needed was ready. Seeing that I intended to use the mother leopard's bones to hunt down her own cub, even Leah felt I was being a bit savage. But that still wasn't enough, so I pulled out the high-level mana stone I had acquired. Seeing this, Leah hurriedly told me to stop. She hadn't expected that I would gamble my entire fortune just for a single harpoon. But in my book, this was maximizing its utility. If we couldn't kill the cub, keeping this mana stone would be utterly useless anyway. Once socketed with the high-level mana stone, the harpoon radiated a formidable power. At this point, it had reached the advanced unique tier and all attributes were boosted by 20%. This effect was more than double what I had anticipated. Perhaps this was a true perk of a high-level mana stone. Carrying my newly completed gear, I returned to the public phone booth to coordinate with the Empress. She was already on her way to the plaza, but I told her not to charge in right away. The enemy possessed a concealment skill, and blindly entering could easily lead to an ambush. The cub was bound to be lingering near the place where its mother died, likely seeking revenge. So I reminded the Empress to be absolutely careful. After all, she and I were the ones who killed the mother leopard. Just then, I noticed a vehicle ahead, and the person inside was indeed the Empress, Jang Mailai. However, she still didn't know my true identity. Driving the car, the Empress asked about my plan. I told her I intended to use the harpoon to pin it down, stripping away its ability to use concealment and turning it into a sitting duck. Next, I would be the first to enter the incident site. Very quickly, Leah also sensed that the cub was close by. It seems it hadn't detected my presence yet. This would make the sneak attack even easier. Immediately, I drove the other end of the harpoon's cable firmly into the ground. Now, all that was left was to wait for the cub to walk right into the trap. Its aura absolutely can never escape mine and Leah's perception. Finally, after a moment, an uneasy, chilling aura slowly began to bleed out. Right beside me, the cub had absolutely no idea I was there. It was incredibly confident in its concealment skill, entirely unaware that Leah and I had already locked onto it. In my passive stealth state, my bonus damage would increase by an additional 10%. In the next second, I hurled the harpoon out with terrifying force. The harpoon tore through the air at high speed, carrying absolute killing intent, and instantly impaled the cub's body. The sudden wound caused the leopard to let out a painful shriek, but what was coming next would be far more agonizing.